welcome you all to the first inaugural SJU Reads Face-Off. As being MC, I've learned very quickly that using big words is a plus, so I'll use some big words in this. So just keep an eye out for those. This SJU Reads, the first inaugural SJU Reads Face-Off has been cleverly titled The Curious Incident of the Flying Troutmans on the Road to Sarajevo. So that's pretty exciting, I thought. Just to explain a little bit about what SJU Reads is, at the beginning of last year in the summer, before we all got to St. Jerome's University, all academically enrolled students received a book from St. Jerome's, which I thought was pretty exciting. I've never received a free book before. And we all got to read it over the summer and blog about it with the professors and everything, and just talk about how the book, what we thought about the book. And then during orientation week, we actually got to sit down with the professors and just talk about the book and just have a great time with it. It was pretty fun, I thought. It's a really good program. So we're going to continue with it this year, and all students coming into residence next year will receive a book as well as the same as we did last year. So we're going to get started with the event, and we're going to start by introducing our 4 book champions over here. Dr. Scott Klein, Vice President Academic Committee. Alex Rowlandson, a first-year arts and business student. Our librarian at SJU, and Jade Shoemaker, a first-year honors art student. So the first thing that we're going to do is invite out each of the book champions to give us a 1 minute. It's going to be exactly 1 minute. I will cut them off. Synopsis of what their book is, and we will start with Dr. Scott Klein with These Chalice of Sarajevo.
Don't start the timer yet. I have a really bad cold, so thank you. I'm going to take you back to 1992 and the siege of Sarajevo. In the hills surrounding the city, gunmen have begun to shell innocent civilians below. It screamed downward, splitting air and sky without effort. There was a moment before impact that was the last instant of things that were. Then the visible world exploded. 22 people waiting for bread, murdered. But life must surely go on. To remember those 22, a cellist vows to play Albanini's Adagio for 22 straight days, in the exact spot where the innocents were murdered. In The Cellist of Sarajevo, we meet an older man who spends his days risking his life in search of water to keep his family alive. A younger man who has remained in Sarajevo with the hope that his city and life will return to normal. And a sniper called Arrow. She has been assigned to keep the cellist alive. Surely life must go on. War is indeed the failure of all humanity. But even in the midst of war, there are still people who seek to preserve the dignity of the human person. In The Cellist of Sarajevo, we catch glimpses of that spark of humanness.
So sorry, I have to keep my promise to carry on there. Next up, we will have Alex Rowlandson with The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime follows autistic teenager Christopher Boone as he investigates the murder of his neighbor's dog, Wellington. His journey takes him across England and far outside of his comfort zone. Along the way, he learns things about his family, humanity, and himself that change his life forever. The story is unique because it's written from Christopher's perspective, the perspective of an autistic teenager. And so essentially it's a coming-of-age story told from a unique perspective that will benefit future undergraduates.
Thank you. Next up, we'll have Warner Rourke with The Flying Troutmans.
This book by Canadian author Miriam Taves begins with the line, "Yeah, so things have fallen apart." In this sad and funny book, 28-year-old Hattie Troutman returns from her life in Paris to care for her niece and nephew following the mental collapse of their mother. With no idea how to care for two teenagers and barely able to manage her own life, Hattie decides to try to reunite the kids with their long-lost father, whose whereabouts can only be guessed at. Hattie heads out with 11-year-old Thebes, a purple-haired chatterbox, and 15-year-old Logan, a smart-ass, hoodie-wearing underachiever, on a road trip from Winnipeg to the southern U.S. in search of their father. So this is a road trip story, but it's also a coming-of-age story, a story about coping with mental illness, about a dysfunctional but loving family, and about the mishaps and joys experienced along the way. As one reviewer wrote, here is one hot mess of a family in a book so enchanting it's hard to tear your eyes away. Once you start traveling with the Troutmans, you won't want to stop the trip.
Alright, our last book champion is SJU Maker with Road's Ends.
Road Ends is about a Canadian family in the 1960s who live in a fictitious town called Sturton. The storyline develops through three of the family members: Tom, the oldest son, who falls into depression after the loss of a friend; Edward, the father, who struggles with his past; and Megan, the only daughter who holds their family together but leaves the town to start a new life. Road Ends is a story of struggle and the role of change in people's lives. It's about learning to persist through it all. It shows how even the simplest conversations with friends or even strangers can completely change someone's view on life. They can help the person without the individual even knowing it. Tom, Edward, and Megan, three people with completely different personalities, tie together their personal and familial struggle, leaving the reader to ponder and consume every step of their journey. Thanks.
Alright, now that we've heard a little bit about each of the books, I'd just like to mention that you can ask questions for each of the book champions. We've got Angus over here who will collect any of the question cards that have been delivered to you, so you can write down your questions and just bring them up to Angus here. Alright, so this is where the interesting part comes, when they get to defend why they think their book is the best. They get to try to convince you to go for them. So again, we will start with Dr. Scott Klein. Oh no, we're going to start with Jade Shoemaker.
Every student goes through some sort of struggle in their post-secondary career, and like the three characters in Road Ends, they will find their way to cope. Like Megan, many students will be away from their family, and yet their determination will help them to push on through the hardest. There are figures in each character's life that wants to see the person reach their goals and to succeed, which is so relevant to St. Jerome's. The faculty and staff want the absolute best for their students and go above and beyond to help them in any way they can.
Next up, we'll invite up
The reason I chose this book in the first place is that my son Sam, who's in first year university, read it last year and absolutely loved it. He insisted that other first year students would love it as well. It's about a dysfunctional family, and who among us doesn't have one of those? It's also about coping with high school, living with a sibling, dealing with an eccentric aunt, figuring out family, life, love, growing up, and just trying to get through life while having fun and dealing with hard stuff. It's a sad book, but it's also filled with humor. The characters are beautifully depicted, realistic but not stereotypes. I fought hard for this book because I found some of the other choices were great books but very sad. This book doesn't shy away from the harshness of life, but it balances this with humor, joy, and the possibility of love, and it would make a great summer read for our incoming students. I cried, I laughed out loud, and ultimately I felt hopeful. I think if you read it, you will too.
Thank you very much. And next up is Alex Rollinson.
Alright, there are a lot of reasons why this book should be the book that the new graduates get, so I'm going to have to talk really fast. Like all teenagers and adults, Christopher struggles to gain independence and find his place in the world. His journey is really simple. It's not grandiose like the Odyssey or like the Hunger Games or something like that. So it's really inspiring and attainable for new students. His challenges at first seem a result of his condition, like he's nervous talking to new strangers. He's scared of navigating unknown places and is easily overwhelmed by information. But because of the relatable nature of this narrative, we start to realize that these are the same problems that undergraduates have too. We're scared of leaving our old friends and meeting new people. We're terrified of this new huge campus, and we're worried that we're going to be overwhelmed by the work. So we learned the lesson that even though people have different perspectives and are different, they might have disabilities, we all share similarities regardless. And we see the value in people like this, and which is really important when you're coming to university, a place as diverse as university. So Mark Haddon has really created a new type of hero, the type of hero that upcoming undergraduates need.
And last but not least, Dr. Scott Klein.
Well, I have to admit that all of my competitors have very wonderful books. Mine just happens to be the best of the four. The book is, in fact, there is a sadness to it, but I think if you read it as a sad book, you miss the point of it, and that is that it is a search for humanity in the midst of all that's going on in the world. And when I proposed this book, I know a number of other of you have also proposed this book. I didn't know that there was going to be a Crimean outbreak, that there was going to be violence there. So I think it is in many respects a timely book. I think it also speaks to what we do here at St. Jerome's. A number of my students who've been on Beyond Borders have actually read this book to me and reported back to me that this book sort of rang true with a lot of the sort of fallout of the violence that they were seeing in their experiences. Do I think it is a perfect summer book? Well, in some respects, yes. I read this book over the summer. It is a fairly quick and tidy read. It's about 225 pages. If you read reviews of it, you will see that it is a very taut book. I don't know what that means.
Alright, so this is part of the event where I stall for time as Angus gets the questions ready. So I'm just going to ask if everybody has bought their ticket to the gala yet. If you have not, we've got two lovely ladies over here selling tickets, and the winning book will be displayed at gala, so do make sure you buy your tickets so you can see that there. Oh, and we have questions. Alright, so this is a question specific for Jade, and you will have 30 seconds to answer this question. How has the book impacted your life?
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna think about this.
You're gonna think about it?
Okay.
This is a big deal, guys. You just gotta go through her whole life and see how it feels. You figured it out yet?
I think everyone goes through some sort of struggle within their life, and Roadheads has really taught me how to manage and to cope, and that there's so many people that are available to you that can help you without even you really knowing that there are, but you just have to go and take that extra step and look for those people in your life, and they're just right in front of you. So that's what I have to say.
Right, I'm all about equality here, so I'm going to have all four book champions answer this question. So, Lorna.
How this book changed my life, oh my. I think it helped me to realize, even though I already knew, but to reinforce the value of family relationships, a better understanding about mental illness, and also it was wonderful to love a book that my 19-year-old son loved as well.
You're next.
I don't know about any of you, but I have never read a book written from the perspective of someone with autism or any kind of mental disability. And I think that it's very, from a literary perspective, I'm going in for an English major. I find it very interesting. that Mark Haddon could do that so effectively is actually very inspiring to me. It makes me want to write something that is not from a perspective of someone like myself. And also I think it helps teach us empathy.
And now we'll have Dr. Scott Crump.
Yeah, just short and sweet. It reminded me of something that I kind of intuitively know. That the higher things in life, things like art, education, these sort of big things that we strive for, are very difficult in times that are conflicted, when there's violence around them. And that oftentimes education, art, music alone can't actually draw us up out of where we need to be. And what this book does is it puts into tension the good that can come from violence when it's coupled with the goodness of art.
Alright, so this next question. What would be the biggest challenge in reading your book? Oh, Scott's already up. He's going to answer.
I don't think there are any challenges, really. It will take you about 6 to 8 hours. It will be a relatively easy book to get into, although it did, I have to confess, take me 2 times to get up and running with the book. Challenges. Knowing the English language would help. Okay.
So speak and read English. Good. Okay, so Alex.
I think that, similarly to Scott, there are not very many challenges. This book starts off with a hook. It starts off like a murder mystery novel that interests you. The perspective is so unique that you just want to keep reading more. Like, when I sat down, I read the first 70 pages in like an hour. Like, I just didn't put it down. But I'd say if you have some sort of prejudice against people with mental disorders, then which is something you might want to overcome, because this is worthwhile read. But that's the only challenge I can think of.
And next up we'll have Lorna.
My book was also easy to read. One of the interesting things about it is that it doesn't really use standard punctuation. So that took some getting used to. It doesn't use any quotation marks or anything like that. So that was something that I had to get used to, but otherwise, fabulous, quick, lovely read. Vote for me.
And lastly, we have Jade.
I have to say that, like everyone else here, it was easy to get into the book Road End. But I'd probably say the biggest challenge would have to be, because there's 3 characters, it kind of jumps around, and the storyline proceeds, but then it kind of backs up when it goes back to, when it switches characters. But other than that, it was amazing, it was emotional, but it was also fabulous to read at the same time.
So common themes here. No English. And it's easy to read. Cool. Alright, so the event is quickly coming to a close, and I would just like to start off with the thank you period. First off, I would like to introduce and thank Diane Bumstead, who ran and organized this event. And now she's going to thank everybody else.
That wasn't part of the script, sorry. Okay, so big thank yous to our book champions who some actually defended their book so well during campus, especially first-year students. And also a big thank you to our committee, and if you guys can just come to the front so we can get you on videotape, so that Carrie, Conrad, Angus, Christina, and also we'll bring up the face-up off committee too. So Aaron and Sam and Jade and Lorna and Alex. I said Angus. I said Christina. You got you. You got you guys. So I'm going to. Okay. Anyway, these are the people that picked. Yeah. These are the people that narrowed down the books. Some of them. Where's Conrad? Is he not here?
He was.
Oh, I know. have helped put on the event today. So big round of applause! Yay! And we were going to do a special thank you right now for Conrad, but he is not here. So, Zach, stall for time. That's why we picked Zach, because he's so good with improvising.
Yeah, okay. So, where's Conrad? Anyone know? Can I get a Conrad for 500? Please? Please? No? Okay. So, just gonna talk a little bit. Oh, yeah. This should be a good thing. So, you've all heard the answers to the questions. You've all heard the synopsis of the books. You've all heard why the book is the best. Now, the voting period starts. So you can come... Yeah, they can come up here to vote, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you can come up to Diana and vote right now on your favorite book if you would like. Oh, and I get a book. Yay! I love books. That's why we're doing this. So, I see you all sitting down and not getting up and voting, and I don't like that. So get up and vote, everyone. Yay! We got our first voter. Oh, and now everyone's getting up and voting. Good. I like this. Perfect. Makes my life so much easier.
I like to vote. Oh, yeah.
We got pictures happening. This is all good. We're still waiting for Conrad.
We're not in the same order. Be careful. Over here.
Is he coming?
1, 2.
No, he's not coming. Okay. Well, anyway, thank you everyone for being here today. Thanks to all the crew that helped us set up, and Zach for being great MC.
Thank you all for coming and have a great day at St. Jerome's University.